Hi, Mark Granis here with Lecture 2.4, Terms, Signification, and Supposition. I'm going to use a lot of new vocabulary in this lecture, but maybe it will help if you stay focused on the theme of clarity. We are talking about how we know what we're talking about, and we've been talking about concepts for a long time, but now we're going to talk about terms. So here's our agenda for the day. We're going to talk about this shift that we're making from concepts back to terms, from ideas back to words. Then we will dig into the concept of signification, what it means, and what the various types of signification are. And then we'll talk about supposition, what that means, and what the types of supposition are. First, we're moving from concepts back to terms. Now, as you recall, concepts are abstract universal ideas that our mind produces to organize and understand reality. Terms are verbal expressions of concepts. We've been over this before. This is what we've been doing for the last few lessons. In this lesson, we're going to shift our focus from concepts, which we've been discussing, that is the ideas, back to the terms, the words we use for the ideas. Now, in the past few lectures, we've discussed 5 different properties of concepts. They're abstract, they're immaterial because they're ideas, and they're all universal. And in addition, they all have both intension and extension. That is, 2 different ways of considering the meaning of the concepts, what the concepts mean and what they refer to. Now we're going to discuss 2 properties of terms, signification and supposition. And maybe we'll see some analogies between these 2 properties and the properties of concepts, intension, and extension. So the first of our new definitions, signification. Signification is defined as the manner in which a term signifies. That is, how a term signifies. Well, first we have to get straight on what it means to signify. To signify something is to become, or perhaps to use, a sign of it. So think about the sign in front of a church, the sign in front of a library. What does that sign do? It points to something behind it, right? There would be no point in having a sign but no library. There could be some point in having a library without a sign, but the only use of the sign is to point back to the library. Well, in logic, all terms signify concepts. That is, they point to ideas. That's the only reason we use them in logic. Again, this is a consequence of our not having mental telepathy. We use words to communicate ideas because that's all we can do. And we've already learned that one of the only 3 things that can ever go wrong with a deductive argument is for our terms to be unclear. Our terms always have to be clear. That's what terms are supposed to do. They're supposed to clearly identify, clearly signify the right concept. But for our terms to be clear, they have to signify the right concept and not the wrong concept. They have to signify all of the concept that we mean and none of the concepts that we don't mean. So, for example, consider these 2 different uses. The first one, all pigs live in pens. All pens are tools for writing. Therefore, all pigs live in tools for writing. Now, maybe I should have said most pigs live in pens, or most pens are tools for writing. But certainly, if I changed that one word, we would say that the first 2 sentences are both entirely correct, and yet we know that this doesn't work. Pigs don't live in tools for writing. That's the wrong kind of pen. Or how about this one? Grade grubbing students are a headache. Aspirin makes headaches go away. Therefore, aspirin makes grade grubbing students go away. In both these examples, the problem is that a key term of the argument changes its meaning within the same argument. In other words, the problem here is with signification. The signification of the term changes within the argument. That's what causes the problem. There are 3 different types of signification that we need to keep track of in this course. The first is univocal signification. Univocal signification is when the term signifies one and only one concept within a proposition or argument. For example, if I say helium is an element, helium signifies only one thing. We might be able to argue that element could have some other meaning, but helium only means one thing there. This is univocal signification, and it's our goal for logic. It might not be our goal for poetry, it might not be our goal for rhetoric, but for logic anyway, we always want to get to univocal signification. We want to be sure that our terms are very precise and that they identify one and only one concept when we use them. The second type of signification is equivocal signification. Equivocal signification occurs when the term signifies two or more different meanings, either simultaneously or serially, within the same proposition or argument. For example, if I say I can't fit into a plane, I could plausibly be talking about geometry because I don't fit into a plane in geometry. Or air travel. I could be saying I'm too fat to fit into a plane. I'm too fat to fly. Either one of those could be something that I'm talking about. The word plane could mean either of those things, and I'm only using it once. So this is an example of where the same word could simultaneously have two different concepts attached to it, and I can't tell which one it is. The other example is one that we've seen already. All pigs live in pens. All pens are tools for writing. Therefore, all pigs live in tools for writing. In this case, we have serial equivocation because pens signifies first one concept and then a different concept. It changes in the middle. So either one of these is a problem. It's a problem if in one usage I can't tell which of two meanings is intended. It's also a problem if in the context of an argument a meaning shifts so that statements made about that term early in the argument can't really match up with statements that are made about that term later in the argument. The third type of signification is analogous signification. This is quite common. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just that we can't really analyze it very well logically. So usually some sort of translation is required before we do anything with it. The definition is it is when a term signifies univocally about one thing and then it's extended to a figurative or metaphorical statement about another thing. A term that signifies univocally about X is extended figuratively or metaphorically to Y. What's an example? The actress gave a wooden performance. Well, what does that mean? The performance can't be made out of wood. The actress can't be made out of wood. What are we saying? Well, there's a literal truth here about things that are made of wood. If we imagine the lectern from which I give my lectures, it's stiff. It's not even alive. It never changes all the time that the words behind it are being said. There's no expression on the lectern, right? All of these things we could apply to a wooden performance by an actress, even though no one thinks that we're saying that she's made of wood. In other words, you have to know the truth of the literal application of the phrase of the term wooden to things like lecterns. And once you know that literal meaning, you can extend the literal meaning to something else. And it's not literally true when you extend it, but it's suggestive of something that does make some sense. Or how about this one? The window of opportunity is closing. Well, why do we talk about a window of opportunity? Well, because windows are holes in walls. The walls keep most things out, but sometimes things get through, and the windows sometimes are open, the windows sometimes are closed. They're certainly less imposing than the wall. There's all kinds of things about a window and a wall that seem to apply, or at least suggestively true, of non-windows, or at least of the phenomenon of opportunity. In all these cases, we assess the manner of signification within a single proposition or argument. That means, for example, that when I use my example here about pens, I'm not saying that you can never have a good logical argument about pens or planes. It might be in the context of the argument that you're talking about that there's no question at all about whether you mean pen as a place where animals live or pen as a tool for writing. And if there's no confusion, then all is well. We don't have any problem with the signification there. But we look within one argument, and if there's a change in meaning inside the argument or a lack of clarity inside the argument, that's how we decide when there's a signification problem. So let's take a look now at supposition. We can define supposition as the mode of existence toward which a term or other signifier points. Consider this example: all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal. Well, there's no mystery about that. We've been using that example for a long time. But now, consider this one. Man is a three-letter word. Socrates is a man. Therefore, Socrates is a three-letter word. This seems formally very similar to the argument that we had before, but in this case, it obviously doesn't work. This is crazy. And we might wonder, well, what's going on here? Well, what's the problem? Interestingly, the problem is not signification, because it's not, for example, that man means adult male in one circumstance and any human in the other. It's not a change in the meaning exactly of man, but it supposits differently in the second example. That is, it points toward a different mode of existence for the concept that it points to. So, for example, when we switch from the term man to the concept man, it gives an effect that's very much like a difference in signification. But it's not really the signification that's the problem. It's the supposition that's the problem. In one case, it supposits verbally for a term, and in the other case, it supposits for something that's real. And it's the change in the existence of the thing pointed to, or the mode of existence of the thing pointed to, that makes the argument unsound. In the Middle Ages, they went kind of crazy with supposition, and there were lots and lots of types, and no one really agreed on what the key types were. There are three that we're going to deal with in this course. First, verbal supposition is when a term refers to itself as a term. In other words, the focus is on words rather than thoughts. That's what's going on in our example about man as a three-letter word. In this usage of man, we are talking about a word. That is, the mode of existence behind it is verbal, not the universal idea of man. Logical supposition is when a term refers to the universal concept that it verbally expresses. This is the standard case. This is what terms always do. We've defined terms as the verbal expression of concepts, right? So logical supposition is what we should expect, and it's what we get when we say, yeah, Socrates is a man and all men are mortal. Those are talking about universal concepts. Real supposition is what we get when a term refers to some instance of the logical concept it verbally expresses. So, in other words, it's going to point to some part of the extension of the universal concept that we're talking about. If I say, for example, Crito is the man standing with Socrates, I don't mean the name, and I don't mean the word man. I don't mean the concept man. I mean that guy over there, right? An actual existing being. So if you think about it, one way of imagining this distinction is that signification is about meaning, and supposition is about modes of being. And I think there's a parallel there with intension and extension. Remember, intension is about meaning, and extension is about the things meant as they exist in the world. And so here we have signification, which is about meaning, and supposition, which is about modes of being in the world. A distinction, once again, between meaning on the one hand and being or existence on the other. I think that might help some people try and keep these distinctions straight. If it doesn't, then never mind. Get rid of it. It's only an analogy. I will also say that if supposition in particular doesn't seem all that clear yet, well, just hang on. We'll be talking about it more as we get into Chapter 5, when we can consider supposition in the context of whole propositions. We're just introducing the idea now, and we will return to this before too much longer. That's it for today. Terms, signification, and supposition. I'll see you next time.